Coming up on Tech News Today, Square comes to Starbucks, BitTorrent releases millions of legal movies, and rumors of the Microsoft Surface 2. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, August 8th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Ring Central. We do everything in the cloud. That's why we love our cloud-based phone system by Ring Central. Zero startup costs, and Ring Central is $20 a month per user. Try it now with a 30-day risk-free trial and buy one desk phone and get a second phone free up to 20 phones. Call 800-543-9980 or visit ringcentral.com and use our promo code TWiT. And by the new Squarespace. Squarespace introduces a new content management system, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website or blog. Plus more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs with automatic device scaling. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT8. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world, starting off with the top 10 stories of the day in the news fuse.
And it's not playing. Ah, there we go.
It tried to.
Yeah.
Apple and Amazon have changed policies in reaction to the hacking of Wired reporter Matt Honen's iCloud account. Wired reports Amazon will no longer accept account changes over the phone, and the New York Times confirmed that Apple has put a 24-hour hold on password resets over the phone while it reviews its policies.
Hey, Iyaz, do you ever go to Starbucks?
Yes.
Well, pretty soon you'll be able to walk in and pay for that very latte. Well, actually, a future latte, because that one will be gone
don't pay for that
by
one again.
then, without pulling out your wallet. In fact, 7,000 Starbucks shops in the U.S. are getting equipped with Square because the two companies have announced a partnership. Not only will Square become the exclusive payment method at Starbucks locations, but the coffee chain will invest $25 million into Square, and Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz will get a Square board seat. It's the future of mediocre coffee.
The board seat's going to be Square.
Sorry, I didn't mean
well.
to be rude to your coffee.
Well, that's okay. You don't have to be.
Four barrel all the way.
Yeah, ritual.
In the Apple versus Samsung case of amazingness, Apple presented a Samsung document that shows Samsung comparing its Galaxy S1 UI to the iPhone. The relative evaluation report shows a multitude of comparisons, including the dial screens of both, saying that the Samsung implementation has poor utilization of space. Legal experts expect the arguments to go like this. Apple's going to argue, see, they copied us. And Samsung's going to say, nuh-uh, we were looking at all the phones.
New MPD report shows Apple and Samsung combined, because who can tell the difference between the two anyway, saw smartphone sales rise 43% last quarter, while other vendors dropped 16%. Prepaid smartphone sales rose 91%, while postpaid sales remained flat. IDC reported on smartphone shipments last quarter, with Android at 68.1% of shipped phones and iOS on 26.9%. Windows was the only other platform to grow at 3.5% of the market.
Not growing all that fast. Verizon's got 5 secret data plans it's not telling us about. These are additional data tiers to the family plans that were announced recently under Share Everything, and they've all been available since June. So 12 gigabytes for $110 a month, 14 gigabytes for $120 a month, 16 for $130, 18 for $140, and 20 gigs for $150 a month. Sorry, it's just so expensive.
It's math.
My head exploded for a second. None of this info is on Verizon's website, which has led some people to say, excuse me, why not? But a spokesperson told Computer World that's just to keep it simple because the majority of consumers use under 2 gigabytes a month, and who would ever need 20 gigabytes except all of us?
You wouldn't want to confuse people by showing them options.
It's like ordering a Mexi Melt at Taco Bell. It's the secret
It's
menu.
like, why keep it secret? It is more money. It's not like you're getting a better deal. You're just getting more
So to
gigabytes.
avoid that reaction you just had, $150.
Yeah.
TechRadar reports Microsoft is working on the next generation of Surface devices. How does TechRadar know? Easy. Job postings, loads of them. All mention the next generation of Surface, and these postings were published after that giant table Surface was rebranded PixelSense. Microsoft is looking for all kinds of engineers to make the next Surface more power efficient, run cool, and more.
Microsoft Chief Privacy Officer Brendan Lynch has confirmed they will leave Do Not Track on by default in the release to manufacturing version of IE10. The feature indicates you do not want to be tracked online. The Digital Advertising Alliance agreed to honor Do Not Track as long as it was not turned on by default. Alliance members may choose to ignore the feature. We'll see if they do.
Do you guys want to fold up your little future Galaxy Note 2 like an origami bird?
I want foldable screens, one so much.
Well, you won't be able to do that.
Killjoy.
But Samsung's new Note model might have a flexible screen. By designing a display that has a nearly unbreakable plane, it will make the product more resistant, which will be helpful the next time, I don't know, you're juggling or something and you drop your Galaxy Note 2 on the ground. You don't have to worry about damaging the display, or at least it'll make it a lot harder to do so.
Will be Gabby Douglas flexible?
One
I don't
can dream.
get that reference.
After 300,000 miles of
Samsung
road
Gabby.
testing without an accident, Google's self-driving car project is ready for the next phase. Team members will start commuting to work with the car driving itself, and in addition to the commute test, cars will also be tested on snowy roads, areas with temporary construction signals, and other unusual terrain.
What's this? An exciting Ultrabook? Yes, they do exist. Lenovo's officially unveiled the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. It's made with a carbon fiber shell, which means it's light at 3 pounds. Lenovo also threw in a 1600 by 900 display. Take that, all you 1366 by 768 Ultrabooks. And offers integrated 3G as an option. The X1 Carbon will be available on August 21st and ranges in prices from $1,400 to $1,850.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Ring Central. When we built the studio for TWiT here, we chose to do as much as we could through the cloud, store documents, hold meetings, and we did not want a big old PBX system, one of those big old phone things down in the basement. So Russell, our IT guy, said we could get a cloud-based phone system through Ring Central, and that was a no-brainer. We love Ring Central. Zero startup costs, no PBX hardware to install or maintain. Ring Central allows us to easily customize all of our phone call handling. Our producers love getting their voicemail in their email. I got one the other day. I was like, hey, look at that. Somebody called me. It was PG&E. But, you know, I mean, you can get useful calls as well, and many people do. You can even get fax messages right there on your smartphone. RingCentral offers all-inclusive pricing as low as $20 per month per user. You can start right now with a 30-day risk-free trial and a special offer just for our listeners and viewers. When you buy one desk phone, get a second phone free, up to 20 phones. So call this number. This is the number just for listeners of Tech News Today, 800-543-9980. That's 800-543-9980. You still didn't get it? Okay, one more time for that guy. 800-543-9980. Or you can also go to ringcentral.com and use promo code TWiT. Ringcentral.com, promo code TWiT. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Let's kick off some discussion of the stories of the day and bring in Julio Ojeda-Zapata, tech writer for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Welcome back to the show, Julio.
Oh, you're muted.
You've muted yourself again, but we can see you. Oh, there we go.
That?
All right,
Better.
doing good. Let's start off. You were saying that people in your neck of the woods are pretty excited about Square coming to Starbucks. Sarah, what's going on with this?
Well, as we mentioned in the news views, the two companies are partnering, and it sounds maybe on the surface for anybody who's familiar with Square like, I can't use my Visa or my MasterCard at Starbucks anymore. They will no longer take cash.
I hadn't thought about that. Some people will react
None of that
way.
is actually true because Square has kind of two methods of payment. You can pay directly with Square, which is the nice geofencing model that Tom and I are always raving about, where you can either fire up an app on your iPhone or your iPad or Android device and pay that way, or if you turn on geofencing and you tell the establishment that is also using Square that you want them to locate you when you're nearby, then you kind of walk up to the register, say your name, they've already got you in the system, works out really well. But they also have the Square dongle, which is something that you actually attach to a tablet or a smartphone, which is a payment method, which will still take all of the credit cards that you might have.
That's the beauty
Don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Square is, in a perfect world, I'm sure they'd like to move as much to the pay by Square method as possible. But they're also going to still be taking cash. But this is pretty much going to be equipped with, at least in the U.S., all Starbucks stores. There are over 7,000 Starbucks stores in the U.S. These are a lot of stores. Square, up until now, has been slow to catch on with the general public because it's really all about making relationships with, in many cases, smaller vendors, first of all, convincing the vendors we're Square. Here's the the rev share that we're going to get.
We're Square. We're proud.
We're Square.
Here's
We're
our
proud.
stuff.
You know that it used to be called Squirrel when
Really?
they first launched.
Why
yeah.
did they change it?
I'm not sure.
I don't think they get the dongle shape.
Yeah,
right, if it was
the shape of the dongle.
Yeah. Just a little trivia for you before they became Square. So Square is something that I'm pretty familiar with in San Francisco. It's obviously where the company is headquartered. So you get a lot of independent merchants, smaller coffee shops, that sort of thing. But for a company like Starbucks, arguably one of the biggest names in all of retail, to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and partner with Square. Starbucks is probably getting a sweetheart deal from Square so that they've got
They're not paying 3%.
exactly a higher percentage than Ritual Coffee Roasters, which is
Acre.
which is one cafe strong and growing. But it really puts Square on the map. Starbucks also, I feel like, especially with the Starbucks app of the week, there's that little app code that you can get when you're up at the register. It's like they have been moving in the direction of kind of wanting to be not a techie company, but a company that you sort of associate with the stuff that you're doing on your phone anyway. Starbucks has its own.
Are you saying it's hip to be Square?
Well, I was gonna. That's what I was saying. I was just gonna start whistling it, but yeah, that's sort of where I'm going.
Well,
with
this is a big deal for Square. I mean, this is a huge amount of money being infused here. Julio, why are you guys excited out there in Minnesota?
Well, I saw the news last night, and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting because I've been writing about Square a lot, in recent years. The geofencing thing, the first time I experienced it, it just kind of blew my mind. But it's sort of old news for me. But our website, twincities.com, just went crazy. People are just buzzing about the story. Most of those people, I'm assuming, have never used Square before. And so this has been a good move for Square and for Starbucks because it just massively increases the visibility of this payment processing technology. The geofencing thing, I still think is going to be a little difficult for people to wrap their heads around. I try to explain it to people sometimes and they don't really get it. But the card swiping angle is big. A lot of coffee shops, Minnesota State Fair vendors, food trucks here in the Twin Cities, they all do the card swiping with a swipe reader. It's becoming very, very common.
Starbucks is also investing quite a bit of money into Square, $25 million. This is their Series D financing, which brings the value of Square up to $3.25 billion. And the CEO of Starbucks gains a seat on Square's board. Last quarter, if you think about just in terms of numbers, how the two companies stand to both benefit from this. Last quarter, Starbucks reported $3.3 billion in revenue. That's a very healthy quarter. In June, Square announced that the company is now processing about $6 billion in annual sales. That's globally. Now, this
annual,
deal,
not quarterly, right?
Exactly,
yeah.
Annually. And this deal is also U.S.-based, at least for now. That said, if you add all the credit and debit card sales from Starbucks, which Square will now get a portion of, rather than the third-party company that Starbucks was using previously, that is potentially a huge boost in revenue for Square.
And just because they're using Square doesn't mean that all locations will use the geofencing aspect, the pay by Square
That's
on your
correct.
phone.
We don't know exactly which locations will have full access to that and which won't. They do say somewhat vaguely participating locations of these 7,000 stores. The dongle will be available everywhere.
I've got a little insight on that. I did a little digging on it, and right now Starbucks has a completely different system where you can pull up a little barcode on your phone and wave it in front of an optical scanner at Starbucks to consummate your transaction, your purchase. And my understanding is, at least at first, Starbucks and Square are going to use a hybrid model where as I understand it, the Pay with Square app itself will spit out a barcode, which you will then use with the little scanner at Starbucks to pay. Sounds a little weird, but that's what I'm being told.
Sounds like a transition plan because it's a little clunkier. The thing about geofencing, it is a little hard to wrap your head around because people don't believe it's as easy as you describe. But when it works, it's freaking magic.
Every time I'm in, there's a particular cafe that's near my house that uses Pay by Square. And so, I walk right by, I get my coffee and I go. And every time I'm there, if there's a line long enough so that I'm waiting for a few minutes, someone is explaining to someone else how geofencing works. And the second person is going, but how do they know? But how do they? Isn't this like a privacy issue?
Yeah.
Because it is a little bit. It works so well that it seems
too easy.
Yeah, that it seems dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm sure if enough people go through the line and go through the pay by square kind of method, that's going to be quite normal. I mean, it's almost making like when Starbucks can actually recognize you when they go, "Oh, it's you, Sarah. I'm going to get your coffee ready for you," and that makes it a little bit more likely for people to keep going to it. I mean, Starbucks probably is going to have every single kind of payment option possible. I mean, somebody was joking in the chat room. Do they still take cash? Yeah, they'll take whatever money you want. But Square is going to have. I'm really kind of curious about what's the next partnership they could possibly get, because Starbucks, if you get in that fast food area, then you can make a lot of revenue. It's like when credit cards were taken at McDonald's. That was a big shift. So I wonder where else they're going to be.
Yeah, if you think of it in terms of Starbucks side, nothing really changes for the consumer if you don't want it to as a Starbucks customer.
Correct.
If you use cash or a credit card, nothing changes. On the Square side, they now get a piece of Starbucks revenue, and Starbucks gets some control over what happens with Square in the future, again, with Howard Schultz sitting on the board.
And you can go to other merchants as Square and say, hey, this big successful chain is using us, you know. So here's some advantages we've learned from
And
that.
if you're at a Square or a Starbucks location, you can fire up the Square app and see what businesses are in your area that might be friends of Starbucks.
Yeah.
So-
And you'll be able to do that in the Starbucks app as well. The Starbucks app will have the integrated Square directory as well. It's interesting how this is all going to compete with Google Wallet and NFC. I'm kind of fascinated by that because just literally yesterday I made my first ever transaction with a Nexus 7 at a CVS pharmacy. You know, tapping the thing to pay. It was like, this can't work, can it? And so I asked the cashier, I tapped to pay, and the cashier said, yeah, we heard about that, but we've never seen it before. You're the first. And we were just, the cashiers and I at the pharmacy, we were all standing there like being really amazed by this. So it's very cool.
That is cool. Yeah, it's gonna. The horse race is on which of these mobile payment systems is going to work. So we'll have to wait and see. Iyaz mentioned in the news fuse the details of the latest from the Apple-Samsung patent battle going on in San Jose, California. The major thing that people are enjoying about this trial is the evidence that gets submitted that then becomes public, that then we all get to page through and find out the secrets of Samsung and Apple. Of course, I'm talking particularly from yesterday about that 132-page translated internal Samsung report from March 2010. All Things D broke that story, putting it up on Scribd and having it on their site. It was created by the Samsung product engineering team, comparing the original Galaxy S and the iPhone screen by screen with notes for improvements. For basic functions, they noted 27 items that needed improvement. Visual interaction effect, they noted 22 items. They also noted some problems with browsing, messaging, multimedia. And what it shows is that Samsung compared designs. Now, it doesn't prove infringement as far as the case goes. In fact, I wonder if Samsung should have just stipulated that comparisons were done and kept this document out of evidence. I don't know if that would have worked. But what it shows is that Samsung put a team together and said, we're getting our butts handed to us by the iPhone. Compare it to the Samsung Galaxy, the Samsung Galaxy S, the S1 as it's called now, I guess, and in reference to the fact that there was a 2 and a 3, and tell us what we could improve. If you page through that gallery, it's fascinating because it's not only a long list of this is what the iPhone does and this is what the Galaxy doesn't, but it's also screen by screen showing you the fact that there are particular items that the iPhone did better. I don't know if we can scroll down fast enough to get to a couple of. There's one comparing the calculator. There's one comparing the calendar. It shows there's one. Hold on. Okay. There's one comparing the call screen, and it shows how there's a thin line between the numbers on the dialer, and the number shows up in nice big letters, and it says, "Hey, our dialer is taking up too much room on the screen, and the number's really small up there. Need to enlarge." The screen, it says this is what we would have to do.
And that is an example, like our number should be larger. Look how nice it looks over on that side. Does not mean let's copy that design. Well, but you have to convince a jury of that.
It's definitely intriguing to think that this is the reaction to the Galaxy S versus the iPhone, because the S2 is the thing that really caught a lot of steam because it was really refined. That version of Android and that skin was actually very popular. Even though a lot of people dislike TouchWiz UI, that phone, the Galaxy S2, was very successful. So the implementation of the changes and the refinements made to the Galaxy S2 and Samsung's version of that, it's interesting to see like how much more does it start looking like the iPhone with the S2? How much more does it look with the S3? The S3's got a very different feel when it comes to comparing to the iPhone. So it seems like it's standard though when it comes to phone design, especially since Samsung was trying to figure out what do we do. I mean, there are even discussions in these slides of when somebody uses an iPhone, it actually invokes feelings of nostalgia as it makes a whining noise. Ours doesn't do that. We want to evoke a reaction too, which is actually something very intelligent. A lot of market research goes into that. So I don't think this is damning by any means, but it's going to be very interesting to see when Samsung goes, look, we have lots of other documents to show you too. This isn't just the only one.
Julio, what do you think? Does this show that Samsung ripped off Apple, or does it show that, like any company, when someone comes out with a successful product, you analyze that product to find out what it does better?
Well, my initial reaction as a tech writer is disbelief that Samsung and Apple could be compared in any way, because you put the two devices on a desktop and they're obviously completely different. You can, instantly recognize which is which. But then I thought about it some more, and if I visited my mother and put those devices on the tabletop and told her to distinguish which is which, she's sort of vaguely aware of what an iPhone looks like. But if I slap a Samsung device on there and call it an iPhone, she'd say, "Oh yeah, that's the iPhone. I've seen that." So that everyman context sort of makes me sort of change my view on this. It's what Samsung has done is very I can't legally decide one way or the other, but it's the similarities are just so stark.
But is that a bad thing? I guess that's the thing, right? It's one thing to say you infringed a patent because you copied a particular method for doing something exactly. It's another thing to say, hey, you made something that's similar because it's, that's what happens. I mean, you could say that laptops are all identical because they're all clamshell, right? But that doesn't mean it's patent infringement, at least at this point.
If there was
And that's a good point. I remember, many years ago when the first iMac came out, a number of PC vendors came out with, Me Too products that sort of evoked, the look and feel of the computer. Although, the specific shapes and the way they worked were different. And Apple, as I recall, Apple immediately pounced and sort of had brought forth legal arguments. And this is a very similar situation. We're not talking about identical looking products, but the similarities sort of verge on the legal infringement area.
I think back when Apple was going after the iMac clones, they actually won a bunch of those. I think it was like eMachines had one that had the same Bondi blue or something, and then they had to change that because of Apple's assertions. If there was a document back to the Samsung case that said, hey, we want to figure out how to do inertial scrolling. Apple has a patent. Let's copy that. Now, that would be damning like crazy. This is just research.
And there were a lot of experts on the witness stand yesterday, including Susan Kerr, who helped design those icons for the Mac that are so famous, testifying that the phone's infringed. However, Samsung's cross-examination pointed out the home screen for the Samsung Galaxy S and the Epic were not the same as the home screen. She was comparing the app screen on Android to the home screen on Apple. So, there are definitely some differences in presentation here. And I've seen, there was one writer at TechCrunch who pointed out if Nokia and RIM had done the same thing as Samsung, put people in a room, create a big document that compares the phones and try to figure out how to compete, they might be doing better now. Let's move on to that Microsoft Surface. Now, we talked yesterday about how Acer thinks Microsoft should just stop doing it, but it looks like they're not only not going to stop doing the Microsoft Surface, they might be planning a second one.
Yeah, like I was mentioning in the news fuse, TechRadar is the one who found these job postings and say there's lots of different jobs. And it's easier to go through the Gizmodo article to try to figure out, okay, well, what are these jobs going to mean for a potential next Surface 2? Not next Surface 2, but the Surface. So Gizmodo's figuring out, because Microsoft's looking for an expert in finishing processes such as paint, plating, and PVD. PVD can be used to waterproof a device. They're thinking, okay, maybe more mobile devices because that's where you probably need more something like that. Search for engineers for alternative power sources because they want better power management and also better cooling. So as Gizmodo put it, and we'll all know for sure when there's a waterproof, battery-sipping, icebox cool Surface 2 hits shelves just in time for the 2013 holiday season. I guess what I'm intrigued by is the fact that Microsoft, in light of knowing that even its SEC filing, that they're knowing partners, that it looks like, at least if this is accurate, it looks like they're really going all in with this hardware model. They're not just saying, okay, the Surface is this reference model to get people and our partners ready and figure out, okay, let's give them a kick in the butt. This is, we are going to become a hardware company. Julio, do you think that's where Microsoft's going? Are they going to go the Apple model and just kind of go integrated?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft is changing its strategy completely. Although I imagine it'll be sort of a hybrid model, because it's certainly not going to sever ties with all its hardware partners, but at the same time, making its own hardware, provides an incentive for those hardware partners to improve, much as Android phones, much as the iPhone helped Android phones improve. All of this competition is very healthy. But this news flabbergasts me because, at least from my vantage point, the Surface 1 still verges on vaporware. I mean, I don't think any tech writers have actually had hands-on use of the device. So I'm kind of sitting here amazed that we're talking about the Surface 2 when practically no one has seen the Surface 1.
But I mean, that's how the cycles work, right? I mean, let's take Apple, for example. I mean, that's just a good example of something like this. Apple is already working on iPhones a couple of years down the road right now. And if the Surface is a runaway hit, then they want to be able to turn around a Surface 2 that's bigger, better, and more impressive as soon as possible, certainly within a year, if they're going to compete with the way that other manufacturers can turn their tablets around. So this doesn't really surprise me. I mean, we might never see a Surface 2. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen because, Julio, like you said, we don't even really know what the Surface is going to. I mean, we just don't know.
We've seen it from afar.
How that's going to be
room.
received.
Yeah.
I believe it's happening, and I just don't know how it'll be received.
Got
in
a
the
release
marketplace.
date, but
exactly.
there's no review.
Right, but I mean, they've got they're all in enough to need to be looking at what's next.
I mean, it also shows if Microsoft is working on the next generation already, it's not something that Microsoft normally does. They go, I mean, with the Xbox, it's got like a 7 to 8 year life cycle at this point. Windows is on, I think, a 4-year cycle. Their phones, or that operating system seems to be updated a lot. But if they are willing to go with hardware and go year by year, if they are competing in that field, that's something Microsoft doesn't really do. I mean, like, you might see a new Arc mouse every couple of years, but you don't see something coming out every single year from Microsoft, because that's a very aggressive strategy that they don't usually do.
It's just a second reference design. That's all it is. Let's take a quick break. Thank our other sponsor for today's show, the new Squarespace.com. What's new, you ask? Well, HTML5, CSS3, new JavaScript foundations, but the most important thing, the coolest thing in my opinion, is the fact that they now adapt your website automatically to look good on lots of different platforms. In fact, they format your images 7 ways, and without any work from you. You just pick the template. Pick one of these new templates, and to say, okay, I want the colors to be this, I want this stuff to be here and there. If somebody picks it up on a phone, it looks like it was designed for the phone screen. If somebody picks it up on a tablet, looks like it was designed for the tablet screen. Your site automatically restructures to any size device, so it looks professionally designed no matter how it's viewed. And of course, the designs are baked into each master template. So all you do, you put in your content. Your content's the same on every platform, but it just looks right. There's also a new page builder tool called Layout Engine that enables you to customize pages in seconds by adding blocks of content, things like photos, videos, text, move it around the way you want it to look. And it can automatically pull photos now from Instagram into your site, instantly syncing pages and galleries to Facebook, auto-publishing new blog entries on Twitter, all kinds of new social interaction. And of course, those 300 fonts, all the great layout colors, all of the things that Squarespace has always been known for, still there, as well as these 50 new and improved features. But if you don't want to just hear me go on and on about features, go try it for yourself. You don't even have to pull out your credit card. You don't even have to have Square or NFC or anything. You just go to squarespace.com, create a website, without giving them any information. Try it out. If you like it, maybe import your blog. They've got great importing tools. See what your blog would look like in Squarespace. If you decide to purchase it, use offer code TNT8 and get 10% off your first purchase on new Squarespace accounts. That includes monthly plans and annual plans. So you get 10% off the annual plan. You save a lot. And with annual plans, you get a free domain name if you want. That's a pretty good deal. Go try it out. Squarespace.com. Use that offer code TNT8. We thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. So Sprint CEO Dan Hess has a plan.
Yes, the plan is to do the right thing.
That's a great plan,
It's a good
Dan.
movie, too.
It is. Yeah.
Spike Lee would love that
He
plan.
also considers Sprint the good guys. We got to be good. Now, that's a different company.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot
We
about
try
that.
harder.
So today, CEO Dan Hess spoke to reporters at Sprint's headquarters and was pretty open about a lot of things. Not only the fact that some good things happened to Sprint this year. AT&T lost that T-Mobile deal that Sprint was very against. Last quarter for Sprint numbers weren't as terrible as some expected them to be. So Sprint, in a way, is that they're going forward with their LTE rollout. So there's some good things coming, but we've talked about it on the show at length. Is it enough? Does Sprint have enough time to get into the duopoly that Dan Hess says is a real thing? And that's, of course, AT&T and Verizon. He said quite a few things, but one, that consolidation of the smaller companies is the key. There is a duopoly. He's not happy about it, and a company like Sprint partnering with another company, or even take Sprint out of it totally, but smaller companies who do good things, partnering with each other is really the only way to get into the game, to compete with AT&T and Verizon.
So he's trying to band together the rabble, it sounds
Yeah.
like. Hey, Metro PCS. Hey, local carriers, regional carriers, join me in the fight against the evil two.
Yeah, we're the rebellion.
Yeah.
If you want to, just make a movie reference. Clearwire LTE rollout is essential, says Haas. He says Sprint is going to run out of spectrum on 800 and the 1900 bands within the couple of years. And at that point, they're going to need to find spectrum in other places. And then looking back to some decisions that some people say might not have been the right decisions over the last few years, Hess says, listen, WiMAX was worth it. It made Sprint the first 4G network. That was important to them. Said despite the large cost to run and shut down, it put us in a position of actually being a viable player and getting there first. He also feels that the iPhone deal worth the high costs. He said it was a smart bet. He said from Sprint's perspective, they pretty much just kind of had to wait to get that phone call from Apple. And then when it came, they said, yes, we are in. He says carrying the iPhone is part of that good guy's strategy that he wants people to associate with Sprint. You were a customer for a while. You wished you had access to the iPhone. You wanted to be loyal to Sprint. He, in Hess's mind, being the good guy, said, eventually you will get that iPhone. We will bring that iPhone to you because we want you to have as many choices as possible.
It is we try harder. It really is.
It is. You could argue that, without the iPhone, they would have just died. It's not so much being the good guys, just being able to play. But the American customer satisfaction index puts Sprint currently at number 1
That's a change.
of U.S. companies. They used to be in dead last place. Now, Hess has been CEO for about 4.5 years, and he says better customer service makes consumers happier, but it also saves us money. In fact, he said, quote, customer care costs are roughly half what they were 4.5 years ago. So he's taking credit for turning that around, and the timing is right. He should take credit for that. I don't know. There's a lot of positive stuff going on here, but I still feel like my stance is the same. If I have the option to switch over to a Sprint plan, are the 15 cities that Sprint LTE is in currently enough for me? Well, no, not if I compare it to wherever Verizon is, and I travel a lot.
Well, AT&T isn't in as many cities as Verizon either.
That's true.
It's all about how fast they get to those cities.
Yeah, well, I used Verizon as an example because I'm a current customer
what
of
phones
theirs.
they have and what those plans look like. And Sprint has pretty attractive plans, and people forget that. They have the unlimited plan. They're the only one left with a truly unlimited plan. Julio, what do you put as the odds for Sprint's success?
Don't really know, but you know what I would really like to see, which has not happened yet, is for a smaller carrier like Sprint to truly differentiate itself, sort of upend its business model. There's a TWiT advertiser sponsor called Ting, which runs on the Sprint network, but has a radically modified, radically consumer friendly business model. I don't want to see Ting do that. I would like Sprint itself to embrace something like this. I would like a carrier to say, the whole contract thing is outmoded. We're going to double down on prepaid. I'm desperate for a carrier to really, really change. And I'm not seeing any of that yet.
I think Sprint's best hope is to become a platform for people like Ting to try out things to see what works, and then Sprint can be downstream of those. And if they do prove to work, they can adopt them as well, but also provide a sort of a wholesale back end for a lot of different companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sprint's basically like a rebuilding set of years right now. I mean, they are diversifying. They're not just sticking with, okay, we're going to service customers. We're going to hit everything. They are a platform in some respects because they do push prepaid with Boost and Virgin. They are running on the Sprint network, and these are subdivisions. So they have diversified early on, and they do promote these things as opposed to like Verizon and AT&T have prepaid options. You hardly know about them unless you are really, really looking for them. But Virgin and Boost, they're constantly on television with ads because Sprint thinks, okay, look, we have unlimited here, we have prepaid here, we have the ability to do things that, well, they're a little bit more desperate, so they can be more nimble than AT&T or Verizon right now.
Yeah, it's always the way. Speaking of desperate, and I'm not sure about nimble, more rumors arising that RIM might be looking for a new suitor, and Samsung, didn't Samsung squelch these rumors already that they would be interested in RIM?
Back in January, they were Samsung was very direct. We're not interested, and we will not be interested in purchasing RIM.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Very small chance. You always have to have hope, I guess. But this time, Jefferies analyst Peter Mizek is saying that RIM's strategic review will lead the company to license BlackBerry 10, and the likely licensor is Samsung. Apparently, because of comments RIM has made to the press saying that they're in trouble.
So they wouldn't be buying RIM?
No, they'd be partnering with Samsung a bit with the licensing BlackBerry 10. Although, Mizek continued in his note saying, we believe Samsung's considering ramping up its internal OS, licensing BlackBerry 10, or buying RIM.
Oh, geez.
So Samsung might be thinking about it, but then again, why not? The thing is, what's in it for Samsung to license BlackBerry 10 when they have Android, they have Windows Phone, they have their own operating system? Why get another one?
I could see one or two reasons for them to license, which is to diversify, to make sure that they've got multiple operating systems out there. Same reason they're toying around with things like Tizen, because they don't want to be beholden to one particular. They don't want to be beholden to Google, right? They don't want to have all their phones on Android. They want to have some competition out there.
Yeah, I think Samsung's been trying to crack the business sector for a bit. I mean, they're old phones, like I think it's like they had these phones, the Blackjack, I think, these very similar devices to Blackberries, because the Blackberry was the king when it came to smartphones. I don't know if they still have a longing for this kind of concept of like, oh, we can finally get RIM's stuff. But,
why copy RIM when we could license it?
Well, I mean, RIM's desperate. They need to do something.
Samsung gives a portion of each of its sales to Microsoft too because of the Android licensing, doesn't it?
I don't know if Samsung's on that list.
No?
I think HTC is, and I think there's a whole bunch of others, but I don't know if Samsung's on that list yet. But yeah, that could avoid, well, considering their litigation with Apple, it might be a little easier to license from RIM and go, okay, look, that's safe. We know that because nobody's suing RIM over anything other than, derivative lawsuits and things.
They're also such a dominant player at this point. It's like they could afford to play around with something alternative to Android because their Android phones, have such a big part of the marketplace at this point. But yeah, I still feel like this whole thing is unlikely.
Julio, do you think it makes sense for RIM to toy around, or to make sense to Samsung to toy around with licensing RIM?
Well, I'll put it this way. I have some fairly fond memories of, years ago of devices running Windows Mobile. The physical devices were very nice. They had very nice keyboards, very well designed. To Iyaz's point, Samsung, I'm sure would like to crack the business market. And RIM, might be the way to do that because their keyboards are second to none. They're integrated into the business world, and I think the two together kind of makes sense in that regard.
All right, let's finish up with over 1 million downloadable books, music, movies for you to torrent legally.
That last word was what now?
Legally. Live concert recordings, movies, radio shows, books, all through a partnership between BitTorrent Inc., the actual company BitTorrent, and the Internet Archive, archive.org. Archive.org actually has 2 servers up that are seeding these torrents of public domain material. That's what archive.org does. They're trying to preserve everything digital, not only the entire web. They're very famous for the Wayback Machine, but also public domain movies, public domain radio shows, concert recordings, et cetera, et cetera. So archive.org has 2 servers up that are seeding these things. Prelinger archives, things like John Mayer concerts, Grateful Dead concerts, Smashing Pumpkins concerts, new pieces that are uploaded into their community collection will have the torrents added automatically. And they say their goal is to, quote, protect and maintain society's cultural artifacts. It also cuts down on the bandwidth that archive.org has to use and makes the content more widespread, more widely available to people with slower connections because they can torrent it. And the EFF points out, like, this is a great example of how you can use BitTorrent and it doesn't have to be something shady.
I mean, I like the phrasing cultural artifacts because I don't know if anything else will ever be back in public domain. It just seems like the copyrights go longer and longer and longer. And to find out some of these movies are available.
Night of the Living Dead.
For free.
The original
legally.
is public domain. You can get that.
And you can remix it. That's the other thing you could do with it. So once you get these assets, you can play with it around. Like I know that some of my friends like doing basically their own versions of Mystery Science Theater. You could goof off with these things and publish this. It's always nice to have options. I know there are a lot of sites that had these free legal movies, but torrenting it makes it a lot simpler because then it can be distributed. You don't have to have a lot of data centers. I should download some movies now.
Yeah. I mean, Plan 9 from Outer Space, some of them are, the Attack of the Spider Monsters. A lot of them are B movies that just sort of fell into the public domain. But there's a lot of interesting and cool stuff, especially older books that are out there. Sarah, Julio, either one of you guys inspired by this?
Well, it's a step in the right direction, and it excites me because the problem I have right now with cord cutting, for instance, I'm sort of attached to the hip with my Comcast account for TV, and the reason I still do that is because if I cut the cord, there would not be enough stuff out there for me to justify the cost savings. But we're slowly, gradually moving towards a future where the free offerings in various categories out there are going to be so rich and numerous that it's going to increasingly, make sense not to be enslaved by the companies that are charging for their content. So it's a step in the right direction. We're definitely not there yet, but we're moving there.
Yeah, this is fun. I end up on archive.org every so often, just looking for random stuff. And the idea that it would be easy for me to get in a faster way, I'm all in on that. My other options are, if I was looking for, let's say an old commercial, something that was in a public domain that I could maybe use somehow in some sort of a video montage. I don't know. I mean, I'm better off there than I am on YouTube where somebody's running ads over it or it was, copied in a variety of different ways, and you've got a bunch of different versions of it. So, yeah, this is great.
You look at the top 25 torrents. I mean, the Isaac Asimov Foundation trilogy radio play is available. Something called the Charlie Chaplin Film Fest, Flash Gordon, the movie, the original, probably not the Queen one. War of the Robots. I mean, there's good stuff. Rescue from Gilligan's Island.
Well, who would renew the rights to that?
That's really interesting. From 1978. Huh.
And one of the reasons I don't use free domain, public domain content as much as I probably should is because it's highly fragmented. So this is a nice consolidation move. You have a lot of stuff in one place and therefore makes it easier to browse and to find stuff.
But Sarah, I know, is very excited to get on to the randomizer.
Randomizer.
Oh boy, I'm excited.
Boo, the world's cutest dog. Sarah introduced me to Boo. That's how I got to know Boo.
Which surprises me because Boo has millions and millions of followers.
It's a Facebook phenomenon, the self-described world's cutest dog, but I will also describe Boo as the world's cutest dog. I could confirm that. He's very popular, but nobody knows whose dog he was until Mike Isaac just blew the lid off of it.
Yeah, it's a Facebook employee. Crazy. The thing about Boo is, okay, if you're not familiar, he's an extremely cute dog. He's a Pomeranian with a funny haircut, so he just looks like a little teddy bear, and he always looks like he's kind of happy. The mom of Boo, which is actually the voice, the page that's gotten the most attention over the years is the Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/Boo. And the voice that writes as Boo was obviously written by a person, and the person was really secretive. The person made a concerted effort not to be outed, did not want to be part of the scene.
Boo has a book.
Boo has a book.
But
Boo's
it's a
been on the
pseudonym.
Today Show, I think, a couple of times. I mean, Boo's made quite a few appearances. He's pretty famous. The person behind the scenes just did not want to be part of the spotlight. I always figured, I don't know, I mean, because the person is kind of a funny writer and is obviously getting a lot of joy out of this, and people wondered, who's writing for Boo? Because obviously dogs can't write. Hey. And turns out it's a person who works at Facebook, which I don't know if that bothers me. I think probably there's a few people who'd say, well, that's probably why Boo got all this attention right off the bat, and maybe Boo's showing up in news feeds more than he should because that person who works at Facebook. But
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know if you want to
Irene-
think about it that much.
Irene On is the name, according to Mike Isaac. But Irene has not granted Mike an interview at this point. Still
Now
trying to
she-
stay in the shadows.
She wants to stay. Yeah, she wants to stay behind the scenes.
Has she always owned this dog, or did she have one of those meetings? She's like, you know what? We could take your dog, we could acquire it, or we'll just create our own, and we'll just crush you again. Is it one of those Facebook negotiations, or was this always her dog? Not really sure.
Wait, did they acquire her in order to get
Boo.
her dog?
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, let's go with that.
Well, I'm not sure.
A very angry dog developer.
Are you saying they
there.
paid Kesha to tweet a link to Boo?
I said no such thing.
I see. Do you care about Boo at all, Julio?
I'm a little tired of Boo. I'm done with Boo.
Wow.
Enough
Real
Boo,
talk.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Tired of Boo? You're tired of life,
You made
Julio.
Sarah's
Come
list.
on. Let's move on to the calendar.
RIM's 4G LTE BlackBerry Playbook is arriving tomorrow in Canada. Tom, you excited? You gonna go up to Vancouver and get your own?
No, I'll just keep. I don't go for the data connections in my tablets usually, so
I thought you were gonna hold up your playbook.
it's at home.
Okay. We're not doing that anymore.
Done with that
huh?
shtick.
So yesterday we talked about this. Motorola had a teaser image for a new phone on its Facebook page, and they were trying to get people to guess what the phone was. And a lot of people said, hey, that's a Droid Razr HD. Wow, this is going to be exciting. Turns out that's not the case. And Motorola had to say, that's not what it's going to be. This was just sort of a fun way to promote a phone that's actually already on the market. Whoops.
Motorola was like, oops, we were too good at generating hype.
Right.
Sorry.
We don't actually have anything behind the hype. Don't believe the hype, in fact. It's their new slogan.
Yeah.
Finally, Microsoft Build 2012 registration has opened, and the Windows Phone 8 logo has been revealed. Woo.
It's red. Like that's about or
It
red
is-
orange.
it
That's
is-
about it.
It's kind of a burnt orange, if you want to
I
get
gotta
technical.
calibrate my monitor.
We're going to show the logo? You showed the build logo, but
scroll
yeah,
down.
scroll down.
It's
a little.
astonishing.
Scroll the other thing down. It's just
Oh.
red.
There it
This
is.
one. All right, there. Well, there
Oh,
it was.
yeah.
There. All right, never
It's so
mind.
hard to see because it's.
Oh, because
There-
when their comments pop on, by the way, it totally repositions where you are on the page.
But
There we
yes.
go.
Ooh.
It's not
Exciting.
crazy
Audio
different.
listeners, it's not that exciting. Don't worry. There's a link in the show notes. Let's move on to incoming.
Incoming message.
Got a voicemail from Mark to 260 TNT show. He's annoyed. Why are you annoyed, Mark? Tell us. Tell us now.
Voicemail or video mail?
It's a video mail, sorry. But it's still Mark, and he's still annoyed.
All right, here we go.
Hey, TNT crew, this is Mark from Racine. Long-time listener, love the TWiT network. Me and my wife listen to you guys all the time. Keep up the good work. What I'm sending
sound
you
that
this video mail about today is what I consider to be a disturbing trend of the tech companies, specifically Apple, basically refusing to give their successor products a name that people can understand and make sense of and know what they're talking about. I have an idea. Why don't we just call these things by generation? So the new iPad, no, not the new iPad. That's the iPad Generation 3 or the third generation iPad. Please lead us to the way of sanity. Thank you very much.
Does
good
it
day.
bother anybody else? Doesn't really bother me as much as it's obviously bothering Mark.
No. I mean, third gen just sounds like iPad 3 to me.
Yeah,
And
just a
Apple
number.
wants to get away from that.
I mean, that's
so.
how iPods are differentiated. I mean, you can see iPod 5G or video, whatever little descriptor. But I mean, what Apple's doing is no different than what car manufacturers have done forever. It's like, okay, that's the 2012 Ford Focus. It's the mid 2011 MacBook Pro. That's how they've been describing their devices. And if you go into like I think your system preferences, you can find out like because AirPlay only works on certain MacBooks, so you need to find out. So instead of looking at MacBook 4, 1, you'll see when it was made. Like it doesn't make a difference to me at this point, other than the fact it's like, oh, it's a MacBook.
I wonder if, assuming that the next iPad will be then the new iPad, which renders this iPad just the one before it, I wonder if we'll start referring to them as the iPad from 2012. I know Apple doesn't want to do that just in case their cycles get out of whack, but I don't know. Maybe we will.
The new 2013 iPad, I bet.
Sure.
Well, to Iya's point, the car makers, they have the same name for their cars, but they always include the year model. They always, they refer to their cars as such year, such model. Apple does not. That's sort of the key difference. That what Apple's reluctance to go beyond just the word iPad is what's creating a lot of difficulty and confusion and angst among the masses.
Like Windows 2000. Just put a model year.
So it gets older and older and older.
Yeah, that's what they want to avoid. We also got an actual voicemail, right? I'm right about this one.
You are.
That did come to 260 TNT show about iOS without YouTube and what it might mean.
Hi, this is Jason from Houston, Texas. I had a response back to what was talked about yesterday about the YouTube being ejected from iOS 6. I actually think it's a neat idea. Some of my friends told me about how on Android there are multiple YouTube apps. And if an iOS app now, I would think, is created to do YouTube, they could kick it out because it mimics the use of what is already on the phone. It's an Apple app. So maybe this will let it be so that we can have the official Google app, or we can have a third party that might do something special, maybe like HD streaming or, better converting for offline viewing. Thanks.
I actually looked into this because I don't ever look up YouTube apps because there's one on the iOS device, and there are a bunch of YouTube apps out there right now. They have different players and different abilities. You can do queues or see your playlists. So, I mean, I think it's definitely going to, if YouTube is bounced out of iOS, there's a good chance that people will be actually finding these other apps because not a lot of people are searching for applications that are already on the device. So they're already out there.
Yeah, but if you compare that to like all of the apps about Facebook, once Facebook rolls out its official app, I don't know that many people who are using anything else, because they know that it'll be the most stable and the most updated, and they kind of know what's going on behind the scenes.
I'm not sure. You'd have to come up with some really compelling feature.
Right.
Yeah.
Got an email from Stuart White, who writes, "Hello all, you spoke on Monday of the move towards touchscreen and away from standard home PCs. Now, I love progress and technology, etc., but the idea of losing my mouse and keyboard seriously frightens me. I don't know about you, but my fingers stick and slide all over tablets. They're useful, they're fun, but can touch interface really replace a mouse and a keyboard forever? I'm not sure I could adjust. I start a game development degree this year. What does this mean for my future career?"
It means you're doomed.
Don't worry, Stuart. You're not doomed.
You don't have to slip and slide.
Input devices are not going to go away any more than desktop computers have gone away. There will be more ways for us to input.
Your
into
options
things.
are greater rather than fewer. I think it's an exciting time to be going for a game development degree because we're innovating. You're innovating, actually. I'm just talking about it.
We're innovating.
The Xbox 360 didn't get rid of the gamepad in lieu of the Kinect. There's all these things to augment what you're doing. So you're going to have thousands of devices to program for. So you're going to have a lot more work ahead of you.
That's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks, everybody, for submitting stories in our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. Be sure to visit there and see what other folks are submitting. Vote on it and submit some of your own. Thank you, Julio, for joining us. Let folks know what you're up to and where they can find your work, both at the Pioneer Press, but also you got some books out there and a good website and Twitter and all that stuff.
Yeah, if you want to, I'm involved in a number of things, and the easiest way to find them all is to go to my personal homepage, ojezap.com, ojezap.com.
All right. And thank you all for watching or listening. By the way, I've had a few folks saying, hey, why don't you put show notes up or links? All the links to all the stuff we talk about are at twit.tv/TNT. In every episode, there's a link that says show notes that goes to a copy of the Google Doc. So go check it out if you're looking for links about what we talked about in today's show. You can also call us, 260-TNT-SHOW, and email us, tnt@twit.tv. Vlad Saval from The Verge joins us tomorrow. We'll see you then.